I'm not the biggest fan of ancient Egypt, don't get me wrong, it is incredible, but now I find when I go to an ancient Egypt exhibition, it's just a bunch of random crap thrown in a room with no real story and just loads of little plaques telling you how important each object is over thousands of years of ancient Egyptian history. So naturally, when I was invited to visit the Made in Ancient Egypt exhibition at the Fitzwilliam Museum, I wasn't sure what to expect, but the exhibit's focus really intrigued me. I hadn't visited the Fitzwilliam Museum before, and I didn't get to see the full museum, so this review is just about this one exhibition. I've also only been to Cambridge once before this, and it was a weirdly formative trip for me when I was 16 years old. I always wanted to be an archaeologist, apart from a few years where I wanted to be a vet, which wouldn't have ended well as I faint at blood. But I came to the University of Cambridge for a residential weekend for people thinking of doing veterinary science degrees. And while I was here, I happened to visit the museum Archaeology, and had a moment where I thought, what am I doing? I want to become an archaeologist and dedicate my life to archaeology. So it felt great to get to come to Cambridge again for a day almost 7 years later and see how far I've come since then and think how proud 16-year-old me would be of 23-year-old Louise, who now has an archaeology degree, is doing a master's and is working in archaeology. So yeah, nostalgic rant aside, let's dig into the day trip. The day started with a 2.5-hour train from York to Cambridge, changing at Stevenage. Not out of the realm of possibility for a day trip, but it did feel a long day on said train home. The exhibition is looking at the makers behind the iconic objects of ancient Egypt, and this was divided logically into the following sections: encountering the makers, workers in stone, potters and workers in clay, makers of faience and glass, metal workers in mass production, ancient Egyptian jewellers, makers of linen and basketry, woodworkers, makers of papyri, and coffin makers. During my visit, I got to hear from the curator, Helen Strudwick, and her enthusiasm was infectious. Each section had subtly animated wall graphics, interesting quotes, and themed soundscapes which added to the atmosphere. The fire soundscape apparently had this really strange sound that psychologically tricks your brain into thinking it's warmer. The lighting was also really pleasant. It was nice and easy to record in here and not too bright or too dark, which hasn't been my experience elsewhere. I'd also really like to point out the object information plaques are a really good level of detail with years on and in brackets how many years ago that is from today, so you don't have to do the maths in your head, and it's just a really accessible adjustment that only someone like me would nerd out about. Now on to some of my favourite objects, which have to include unfinished objects, which highlighted the process and craftsmanship of these people. For example, grids to create proportions for sculptures and relief carvings. This example is a limestone slab with a grid guide for drawing animals dating to 664 to 332 BCE. My favourite part of archaeology is discovering the real people just like us, who lived thousands of years ago. You've got items like a record of work in the Valley of Kings which lists absences. For example, on days 6 and 7 of 1 month, the entire workforce was attending a funeral of a woman and didn't work on that day. And on day 12, Penebu was absent because he had been bitten. I also love an item where you get a physical representation of people who lived thousands of years ago, and there's a handprint on this soul house, which is a clay model in the shape of a building where various items of food were laid out, and these were usually included in burials. This exhibition also showcased the incredible preservation you can get at ancient Egyptian sites due to the climate, with items like this incredible wooden cabinet that almost looks modern but dates to 712 to 332 BC and honestly looks better than my bedside table. There were also some representations of one of my favourite ancient Egyptian gods, Talleyrand, which just honestly got me thinking about Moon Knight, which may be the current extent of my ancient Egyptian knowledge. Can we rewatch Moon Knight? For my favourite object of the exhibition though, I have to go with these 7 faience frog amulets, which are inlaid with gold, which are over 3,000 years old, and they are so small and honestly just absolutely adorable. These objects I've mentioned really just scratch the surface on what this exhibition has to offer, and I've just chosen ones that resonate with me the most. General admission to the wider museum is free, but this particular exhibition is paid for. Tickets are £14.50, but free to museum members, half price to art pass holders, and 18 to 25-year-olds can join the Fitz list to get free access to tickets. I obviously had a unique experience here as I was invited to a private viewing and did not have to pay. I've also not seen the rest of the museum, but I do really hope to go back at some point and this was honestly just a really cool experience, so thank you to anyone supporting my videos and getting me to be invited to things like this. While this might not be my favourite period of archaeology, the Fitzwilliam Museum Made in Egypt exhibition was a breath of fresh air, and I enjoyed seeing the real people behind some of the most iconic objects in all of archaeology. Without these makers, the world of ancient Egypt wouldn't be what we think of it as today, and I have a newfound appreciation for the time period. I'd really recommend the exhibition, and it is on until the 12th of April 2026. The exhibition also has an accompanying book, which was super useful to go back through to help make this little video. Have you visited the Fitzwilliam Museum before? Let me know in the comments below, and of any other museums I should visit and do similar videos for. Remember to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video too, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.